Volkswagen just said it's going to stop producing diesel and gasoline or petrol powered cars in 2033, but only in Europe. I'm very curious about this strategy. What kind of cars does it think the Chinese will be buying in 2034? Now, that said, it is good news to hear that Volkswagen is doing everything it can to wean itself off the crack cocaine of the sales of gasoline-powered cars. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking. Great to see you. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you guys for supporting the channel, subscribing to the channel, because it actually does help the algorithms, helps us get more of this content out there to people to help them. And there's so many myths that people still believe. One of the things they believe that batteries in EVs only last for 10 years, right? Have you seen that? I've been seeing that everywhere recently. They're just disposable. They can't be recycled. Have you heard that too? There's so many myths that people still believe about electric cars. So yeah, share the stuff with your friends. I mean, don't argue with them, because if you argue with these guys, then just be wasting your time. But if you share the content with them, they can slag off on me, but some of them will probably end up listening and learn something. So Volkswagen, they have just announced they will end sales of diesel and gasoline or petrol powered cars in Europe in 2033. So they fired Herbert Diess, who wanted them to do exactly this, and announced this anyway. Now, I'm very curious though. How many of you here, I really want to know this, how many of you believe people in Europe will be buying gasoline and diesel powered cars in 2030? So say 3 years before Volkswagen stops making them. I personally don't think anyone will want a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle in 2030. They're going to cost more than an electric car, right? You're going to have to power them with the dwindling supply of gasoline stations, because gas stations are just going to start closing down everywhere. You're going to be thinking, well, where do I find one now? There's going to be EV chargers literally everywhere, including at your own house, probably at your business. They'll be everywhere. They'll be ubiquitous. Realistically, people will be thinking, if I buy a gasoline powered vehicle in 2031, what's it going to be worth in 2035? Peanuts. It'll be worth literally peanuts. It'll be worth what? Remember, these things cost like $1,000, and then 2 years later they were worth, well, pretty much nothing when these things came out, right? Surely even the dumbest people are out there are going to be able to work out the fact that the resale value of gasoline powered vehicles in Europe in 2033, 2034, 2035 will be virtually nothing, right? Surely. Now the thing is, Volkswagen is saying that after 2033, they will continue to manufacture diesel and gasoline powered vehicles in the US, China, and Australia. What? I mean, China's already 27% electric, fully electric, 27%. They're going to be over 40% fully electric next year. By 2030, it's all finished in China. There will be no more gasoline powered cars being made in China in probably 2028. Or at least being bought in China. They operate in there. That's their biggest market. They make more profit in China than any other country in the world. America is their second biggest market. What are Volkswagen thinking? I mean, let's be honest here. General Motors, we've been slagging them off for a while. But, I mean, 75% of the revenue comes from the US. They actually have a strategy that makes a lot more sense than this strategy. So, honestly, the two biggest car makers in the world, Toyota and Volkswagen, they both appear clueless. Really, Volkswagen thinks people in the US in 2034, 2035, and China of all places, come on, they really think they're going to buy EVs there in 2034? Yeah, come on. That's, wow. Anyhow, what else have they said? German car giant Volkswagen will exclusively produce electric cars in Europe in 2033. And in June 2021, Volkswagen's passenger car sales boss Klaus Zellmer said the German car maker would end production of diesel and petrol cars in Europe sometime between 2033 and 2035. So this is not a really big change. They've gone from sometime between 2033 and 2035 to 2033. However, they've reaffirmed their commitment in the US, China, and Australia to build gasoline-powered vehicles beyond 2033. Please, guys, please let me know your thoughts on that. Let me know if you agree that this is just madness. In particular, China. I mean, their biggest market in the world. They make 40% of their profit in China. And they're already losing market share pretty quickly. They're losing sales in China, of course. But as is every legacy auto manufacturer, because the Chinese are just selling more and more of their own branded cars because they're the only ones making EVs. Realistically, they're the only companies making EVs. Tesla and China branded vehicles are the only EVs being produced en masse in China. They're the only real options for customers in China. Now, surprisingly, I just saw the sales figures for China in September. Well, we've all seen them. We saw them a while ago, but I just made another video about those. And the Volkswagen ID4 wasn't even in the top 20. The top 20 best-selling EVs in China in September, it wasn't even in the top 20. That's got to be a little bit alarming, right? Now, interestingly, Audi have announced plans to go electric only in all markets except China. What? Why? Please, someone has to explain that logic to me. I don't get it. Now, unfortunately, as I've reported here before, because of Australia's local emissions targets, we will be one of the last markets to ban the sale of petrol and diesel cars. That's what Volkswagen says. They've publicly said, Australia doesn't care about emissions. We're just going to sell our leftover gasoline-powered cars. We'll dump them off in Australia. Australia's a country full of rednecks. They'll buy them. That's pretty much what they're saying. Probably what Toyota plans on doing as well. Now, I don't actually think that's true. I think Australians will want EVs much sooner than these guys think. They're just hoping that they can dump their vehicles here. And I don't think it's going to work out that way for them. But we'll see. If you're an Aussie, let me know what you think. So what's happening right now in Europe? A combination of limited supply and high demand for Volkswagen's electric cars in Europe has delayed the introduction of its EVs in Australia. To be honest, they never planned on really bringing them to Australia for at least a few years because we have pretty much no emissions rules here. You can sell whatever you want. So Volkswagen were like, no. We need to sell our EVs in China and Europe because we're having to basically pay for these emissions credits because we're polluting too much. So we might as well make them for those countries and sell them there. That actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it from a business perspective. And as of October 2022, Audi and Porsche are the only Volkswagen Group brands with electric cars in Australian showrooms here now. However, models from Volkswagen, Skoda, and Cupra are eventually going to come. They say next year. We'll see. Hopefully they do. So Volkswagen is saying things like this, and people here in Australia actually believe this. I'd say 98% of the Australian population believes this. Oh, we just don't have enough EVs because of semiconductor chip supply. There's not enough. If there was more semiconductor chips, we could make a lot of EVs, right? That's the kind of thing Australians are currently believing now. The majority of Australians, obviously, some of you Aussies who watch this channel would know much better than that. The reality is, okay, Volkswagen have admitted they don't make profit from their EVs. So they've admitted that less than 20% of the vehicle production of their EVs is automated, or made by robots. So more than 80% of it is done by hand. It's basically like building an old coach, right? It's like building a Rolls Royce or something. It's like a hand-built car. So, if you want that kind of experience, if you want to, drive around in your Volkswagen ID4 and think, wow, I'm driving in a hand-built vehicle. This is what, people used to do 100 years ago. Then that's great. If you want that, you're getting it. You can get that experience. You can buy a Volkswagen ID4. Now, just to give you some context there, more than 70% of Tesla's production line is automated. Volkswagen CEO was probably fired because he let everyone know that it takes Volkswagen 30 hours to build an EV. It takes Tesla 10 hours. I don't know how long it takes other companies they haven't disclosed. And the reality is that Herbert Diess himself was the man who disclosed that information to the public. And basically what he was trying to do by disclosing that information was to get Volkswagen to innovate, to start producing EVs efficiently and at a profit. From 2026, though, things should change for the much better at Volkswagen. The key reason being they'll have their new scalable systems platform, which they think that will be a much more efficient way to build their cars. They'll be able to build them and potentially make a profit. Hopefully they can make a profit from them in 2026 because then they can start selling, lots more than they are now. The other thing this will do is allow Volkswagen to introduce a wider variety of models with common shared parts, reducing production and development costs. They say they plan on releasing 75 electric cars by 2027, 75 different models. And that's kind of similar to the strategy of General Motors, Great Wall. These three companies plan on producing a huge number of electric cars. Now, if you'd seen Toyota's concept cars, it released, I think, 21 different concept electric vehicles, and it kind of presented those to the public as though these are our future EVs. They've recently disclosed that they weren't. They were just concept cars, and there's no correlation to logic or production with those vehicles. But anyway, the point is here, we know that those three companies are making a huge number of different electric vehicle models, and it's going to be interesting to see if that strategy actually works out. Now, that strategy is working quite well for BYD right now, but they are vertically integrated. So it's a very different way of building their cars. BYD, they build the battery packs, they build the motors, and they build almost everything that goes into their cars. Even the semiconductor chips, they build them. Earlier this week, overseas publications reported the high-performance Volkswagen R brand will actually cease to exist by 2030. And Volkswagen will just start building ID3, ID4 R models to replace it instead. Now, interestingly, Volkswagen has actually started producing electric cars in its factory in the United States. So moving electric vehicle production to its Chattanooga factory in the US was part of an $800 million investment. And that's going to pay off for it when it starts actually producing the cars and selling them from there, because then they'll actually start qualifying for the electric vehicle incentives in the US, which are very, very important. Of course, they'll make a huge difference. That said, Volkswagen did qualify for the incentives before they were recently removed with the introduction of the new IRA. And in the third quarter of 2022, Volkswagen ID4 hit a new sales record. With local production in the US, it could actually become one of the top selling electric vehicle models in the US. Well, that's what Inside EV says. Anyway, I'm not so convinced personally, but you never know. One of the reasons I'm not so convinced is I still don't see how Volkswagen have a path to profitability on this car. It's exceptionally heavy. It's difficult to build. It's not automated. And realistically, I don't think the tax incentives in the US will be enough to actually enable Volkswagen to profit from it. But I could be wrong. Volkswagen reported that during the third quarter of 2022, its vehicle sales in the US improved 12% year on year to 88,820. Now, Volkswagen's had a few negative quarters, so it's a good change for them. However, their year-to-date result is 232,100, so meaning it's down 20% versus last year. However, the best news for Volkswagen is that their all-electric ID4 is back, sort of. In Q3, Volkswagen delivered 6,657. That's 10% more than a year ago, and it's a new record for Volkswagen in the US. In fact, Volkswagen's electric car share out of its total volume improved to 7.5% versus the previous quarter when it was less than that, but it was at 7.6% in the same quarter last year. So as a percentage of actual car production, Volkswagen's EV production hasn't changed at all in 12 months. So what's Volkswagen's actual production goal at the Chattanooga plant in the US? Well, they plan to achieve 7,000 units per week. No, sorry, just kidding. Per month. 7,000 per month. So yeah, they're saying they can do that before the end of the year. If they can do that, it would become one of the best-selling electric vehicle models on the market in the US. But of course, they can't just produce them. They also need to sell them. The reality is that there is this myth still hanging around where people think that if you've got an electric car, I still see this comment made very regularly. It's not true. If you've got an electric car, you'll sell everything you can make. Yeah, sorry, factually incorrect. Just talk to BMW about the i3. Ask them how that went. Talk to Nissan about the Leaf. Ask them how that's going. Talk to Mazda about the MX-30. Ask them how that's going. Talk to Jaguar about the I-Pace. Ask them how that's going. I could go on and on and on. So far this year, 11,000 Volkswagen ID4s have been sold in the US. That's nearly a 10% drop versus the same time last year. Cumulatively, more than 27,000 ID4 were delivered to customers. So if you're wondering how much they actually cost, right? The US-made 2023 base model Volkswagen ID4 standard range, that's the rear-wheel drive version, with a 62 kilowatt-hour battery pack, starts at an MSRP of $37,500 US. And it's better equipped than previous versions. So it's actually not bad value when you think about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, getting back to Volkswagen's global electric vehicle strategy. There's going to be a hell of a lot of pain for them if they follow through with what they're planning on, especially Audi, selling petrol-powered vehicles in China after 2030 for a luxury car manufacturer. That ain't going to work. I don't think they'll sell a single one. Maybe 2 or 3, but it'll be very small. Same thing for Volkswagen. Someone, please explain to me what their strategy is. How do they think the Chinese are going to buy EVs in 2034 when they're going to hit nearly 50% EV adoption next year? Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.